It seems to be an odd gospel today. Here these people come seeking to see Jesus, seeking to meet this person they've heard so much about. So they go to somebody who speaks their same language, that being Philip. And Philip, being a good follower of Christ, as any of us would even 2,000 years later, goes to Jesus. And what's Jesus' response to these people who want to know who he is? You kind of think you're gaining in numbers. Wouldn't any public speaker like to know that? That you had more people coming to see you? And his response, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies. What a killjoy. All this enthusiasm and excitement in the build-up. Could you imagine the people's hearts as they came closer and closer to this person they've heard so much about? And he just seems to smother, apparently, that enthusiasm. Kind of feeds that notion that to be a faithful follower of Christ, to be a quote-unquote religious person, you can't smile. Because it's all too serious. And how often do we see that as a model of faith, a model of discipleship? How much do we see living the Christian life as one that kills our fun? That's a life of being bored. Doesn't that sound enticing? I suspect Jesus in this gospel would never be encouraged to be a vocation director for any diocese or religious order. But in the context of the readings today, what is the message being delivered to us? It seems to be so different from everything else. And I suspect the message being delivered to us as we gather in faith today is that it's not enough to see Jesus. It's not enough to hear his voice, to learn about him. But to seek Jesus is to live an intimate relationship with him. What Benedict XVI calls a total commitment of self to Christ. I actually have that quote in my office to remind me of that. That being a Christian, being a seeker of Christ, involves a total commitment of ourselves to Christ. It means living a relationship with the Lord. The words from the prophet Jeremiah in the Old Testament signals a change in the Lord's relationship with the people. Prior to Jeremiah, it was built on the law. These are the things you need to do to be a faithful follower of mine. And the problem is, as much as we know the rules, what else do we do with the rules? We break them. We're pretty good at that. Or reworking the rules, or rewording the rules. And you wonder how many times God was just pulling out his hair at his children. What are you people doing? And yet, we're reminded from the very beginning how much he loves us. The people made in his image and likeness. Loves so much that we do have that gift of free will, and we do have that gift of freely choosing him. And so realizes that he needs a different approach. And Jeremiah enters that different approach, that this new covenant won't be just one that we have written down. This new covenant is not going to depend so much on what we do. It's going to depend on God's love for us and his desire to be in union with each and every one of us on a first name basis and better. And He's going to write that covenant within each of our hearts. And that we'll experience that fulfillment. We'll experience that rapid heart rate, if you will, when we seek to fulfill that desire that He's written right there. But He's just not going to sit back and wait for us to come to Him. He's going to be active in approaching us. We have the examples of the Lord in the Hebrews. Jesus offering prayers and supplications. Those are prayers of intercession for us, His people. We have the example of Jesus in part of this prayer in the Gospel of John, experiencing stress and struggle and trial. And the readings remind us that He's so serious about this loving relationship with us that He's experienced suffering and temptation in times of trial. Times of trial may be more significant because trials aren't caused by ourselves. They're from outside sources. We don't necessarily have control over what causes times of trial in our life. That's part of living in a community. But He's going to remind us His love is so great for us, this desire for us is so great, that He's experienced those moments. So that He can remind us as we experience those moments that He's there with us. Not to take everything away from us. Not to snap His fingers and see all the problems disappear. But to allow us to draw strength from Him. Strength from His gift of faith. Strength from His love that feeds those virtues of joy and hope in our hearts and give us the strength we need to persevere through those moments. To keep in mind that the Lord is with us. That the Lord is in those around us, our families, our friends, our families of faith. That we don't go into these moments of darkness, chaos, confusion, struggle, trial, whatever you want to call it. We don't go into those moments by ourselves. But we go into those moments as members of the body of Christ. Members of the people of God, united by His love. United by our desire for Him. And confident that He never abandons His people.